Oh, welcome into the Lair. I'm going to go over some reverb, delays, pitch, chorus for you today. We're going to get a little basic and go a little more advanced, trying to please everybody. Excuse me, which I think we can. So it turns out this is probably going to take 2 weeks. So consider this episode 1. We'll squeeze in as much as we can, and then we'll finish up next week talking about some pitch changes and some unique delay techniques and stuff, along with some basic stuff. So part 1, here we go. I'm using the same song I've been using for a while, Weirdo, produced by my friend Brent Paschke and Mr. Oliver and Mr. Carter. The artist is Mr. Midwest. You've seen all that before. We'll show it to you again so you can go check the full-length version out. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and show you just a basic vocal.
She bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weird.
Okay, so let's add a reverb. We're going to add the bricasti. The reason I'm going to use the bricasti is I want to show you a little bit about early reflections, and I am familiar with this one. The plug-in reverbs, Altiverb, Revolver, the Waves reverbs, they all allow you to do the same thing, but I think it's pretty dramatic with this one, so we're just going to use this for a second. So let's add a little bit of reverb.
She bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back.
It feels good. You can take your quarter note, multiply that by 4. You can try that. I'm basically using the quarter note plus the whole note plus a quarter note more, and that seems to work. I can take the whole note, divide it in half, or you can just trust your hearing, which is what I do most of the time. And then every once in a while I'll want something a little different, and I'll go to the math. But basically that sounds good to me, so let's start there.
The weirdest things I've only
now, for the sake of the example, I'm going to crank up the reverb a little more than I would like.
She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed
Okay,
about.
so Dan, come over here. Let's go over here. Let's get into edit mode. Now, this would be the same as same technique on a plugin. Let's go to early reflections. Okay, you notice I've got equal amounts of both. So now let's bring the vocals a little bit towards the front.
She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about.
Can you guys hear that?
And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then
the other way to
she
get
bend
it.
it over, bring it back
Put
and
them back
push
in the
it
room.
out. She does the
Pulling the early
weirdest things I've
reflections
only
down this
dreamed
time
about.
instead of the reverb
She
down.
bend it over, bring it back and push it out.
Just drastic.
She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she
Now let's
bend
bring it
it
to the
over,
front.
bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out.
So that's basically what the early reflections are doing. They're simulating the way that your ear would normally determine where the sound source is from, and then once the sound in that room reverberates around the room, your ear can determine the size of the room, but location of a particular sound is best handled by certain delays and primarily early reflections. So let's try a little shorter reverb just to show you that it doesn't always have to be the long one if we want to go a little shorter.
She bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the.
So basically, we've got a little bit of a longer reverb, short reverb. We can control the early reflections for different sorts of things. Now I'm going to show you what pre-delay does. What I like to do on the pre-delay as I actually do the math on pre-delay. I think our quarter note is 435 milliseconds. So I wrote this down ahead of time. The eighth note would be 217, 16th note would be 108. Let's start with the 16th note. Come over here to pre-delay. Okay, let's go to 108. All right, this is my pre-delay.
She bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring.
I would use that. I tend to use shorter pre-delays just to keep it the sewer pipe effect a little bit down. As you get longer, you're actually able to tuck the start of the reverb behind a beat. So let's try an eighth note. The eighth note in this case would be 217. .220 is fine.
She bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she.
Let's try a longer pre-delay. Now, if you listen to some of the classic Mariah Carey records that Mick Guzowski mixed back in the day, he's using a lot of longer pre-delays sometimes. And
she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend.
Pretty cool, pretty dramatic actually, huh? We've gone over the three basic parts of the reverb component, and just to reiterate, the selection that I use for my pre-delay time is obviously tends to be what feels best and what sounds best, but shorter pre-delay times in the 16th note area tend to be better for up tempos for me, and then I find that ballads and things like that, sometimes I can get by with an eighth note, a quarter note. Don't be afraid to experiment with triplets. Don't be afraid to just trust your ear and get something weird. If you listen to an old record I did called Get the Party Started with Pink, a lot of those delays aren't actually real numbers. They're just what felt good. I coined the term at the time, asymmetrical delays. Don't have a clue what that means. It just made me sound important. So just experiment, and that's the basic uses of the pre-delay. Now the early reflections has a similar effect. If your vocal is sitting a little bit too far in the mix and the rest of your track is a little on the dry side, bring those early reflections up. And if you're more ballady and the track has a little more swimmy, a little more effects, then you might decrease the early reflections and make the singer sound like they're part of the song. What we got going here is we've got a basic reverb. This is your stock digi reverb. Notice that on one side I'm using an eighth note, other side I'm using a quarter note. And sometimes I like to change the timing just a little bit so that they won't land on top of each other, and gives you a little bit of a chorusy flange thing. And I'm keeping the feedback a little on the low side because basically what I'm trying to do is just extend the reverb and add a little reverb. Now what's critical here is the mix level. See, I'm using 57% here on the shorter note, a little less on the longer note. So let's see what that sounds like.
She bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out.
See that decay? It's about the right time. Now let me play it for you without. This is just the reverb. She bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then she bend it over, bring it back and push it out. She does the weirdest things I've only dreamed about. And then okay, so there's so many options you can have, so many different combinations and parameters. You can take the dry sound and you can add more of the delay if you want. You can use more of the reverb if you want. Just experiment and find things that work for you. This is kind of a basic starting template that I use.